Definitely. So clearly, one of the advantages of renewable energy is that it lowers the tariff. And it also reduces the physical stress on governments that are importing energy or using fossil fuel, to power the economy. Anytime you find locally available sources of energy, especially renewable energy, it lowers the tariff. It lowers emissions and reduces the stress on the physical, to keep importing or paying for electricity. In this case, if I recall, I think it's about $48 million that it costs, to import the tariff and to import electricity from Ethiopia. Over time, this will be reduced because don't forget, this project, I think, is replacing 40% of the imported fuel. But still, the grid is using, or you still have people in the economy that are not on the grid. So with the expansion of the project, we hope to reduce the imported energy from Ethiopia, and also get more firms that are using diesel and fuel oil to be on the grid. So for example, you have several bases here, and you have a huge port and several operations. So the idea is, with the expansion of this program, we're going to use batteries, we're going to use wind, we're also going to use solar over time, to further reduce the cost of the tariff and to reduce the pressure on the fiscal to pay for imported electricity. More importantly, we're going to reduce the emissions of using fossil fuel sources of energy. And like I mentioned, we hope to use the renewable energy source here to make green fuel or provide green energy for firms to come here, set up green energy sources for the ships that ply this route. 30% of maritime traffic goes through this route. In fact, Djibouti, as far back as 1865, was set up as a refueling bunkering station. So we hope that we can go back to that using green fuels. And these green fuels would, of course, reduce the emissions from global shipping. So significant. There's several things. The first thing is AFC has focused on de-risking opportunities for infrastructure. And what does that mean? It means that while there's a need for things to be built, it can't just be built because it's not a project. And the emphasis has always been that there are no projects or there are no bankable projects in Africa. So AFC's value has always been working with sponsors and governments, spending our capital to de-risk the opportunity and make it bankable. So for example, in this case, we spend the initial capital, to make the case, to have the power purchase agreement executed, to have the obligations of the government under the power purchase agreement backed by a government guarantee, and to have that government guarantee further, insured for political risk by the World Bank's Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. So this whole process of reducing the risk of a project is the key role AFC plays. And while this amount is typically modest, but without that initial capital, nothing gets done. So our real value and how we encourage other Africans to look at it is that we must always take the first step and demonstrate that there is a path forward, and then people can come along us. So we are focused on taking those first steps, and we have built a coalition of willing partners, like the FMO, climate finance managers, on this project, and then several others, like the African Development Bank, our Trade Development Bank, and DEG, FMO, African Export-Import Bank, and just several other partners that we typically work with, as we go along. But we always take that first step to prove the case, encouraging the government to invest alongside us, or encouraging the sponsors to work alongside us. And then we would, of course, have a case that people can come back. So very good question. Typically, there is no return without risk. And what we do is we manage the risks to assure the returns. And we do that by our conviction that Africa needs to develop. and that Africa wants development. And Africa has the ingredients for development to take place. It's just that we're starting late in the day, but we have several examples of how it's been done before. We have a team of dedicated professionals that understand how to get it done. We have partners in government that are also keen for development, that trust us, and work with us to ensure that we deliver. So it's a combination of 1, knowledge, 2, conviction, mindset, and the discipline to execute to get it done. Bearing in mind that things can go wrong, but that you must have the solutions for those things that go wrong. And in the main, people want development. People are eager for development. And once you show them the path, they'll typically follow. So, the key message is that AFC is a very important organization for Africa. AFC has demonstrated that African capital can unlock further capital for development in Africa. AFC has demonstrated that we're a trusted, reliable bridge for a prosperous African future. AFC has demonstrated that it has several projects that it has done very well, and it can do so much more. So we're calling on partners, especially Africans, to commit more African capital, to develop our continent. We're also calling on partners from the global south and the global north to work with AFC to accelerate development impact on the continent.